Howdy gamers. Mario Kart is without question one of my favorite series. Ever since I played Mario Kart 64, I've been hooked on the series like a housewife on Xanax. There's been many attempts at doing the formula better than the big N-word, but I still find myself crawling back to Mario Kart with each new iteration. Pretty much every game in the franchise feels like a big upgrade from the one that came before. Every family has its disappointments. That does make looking back at the older titles a little rough though. Each game has its quirks that make it unique, but it's pretty hard to beat the current Mario Kart. Every game has its fans that prefer it over all the other ones, but everything has to start somewhere, and Mario Kart started on the 3D powerhouse, the Super Nintendo. You might look at this now and think, holy shit, that's fucking ugly, but back in the day, these graphics were mind-blowing, and it was all possible because of the Mode 7 capabilities of the Super Nintendo. Mario Kart wasn't the first game to heavily feature the newfangled Mode 7. That would be F-Zero and Pilot Wings, which launched with the system. Pilot Wings was rad as hell, but it was F-Zero that showed this new technology could reinvent home console racing games, and I'm pretty sure it turned a bunch of kids' brains into a Pollock painting when it hit America in 1990. It was a blindingly fast game that felt about as high-tech as the cars it depicted, but it had one major downside. The Super Nintendo came with two controllers bundled in, but none of the launch titles had simultaneous multiplayer support, including F-Zero. So if your buddy was over for some two-player F-Zero action, the closest thing would be some 16-bit roadhead. That drawback is likely where the idea for Super Mario Kart initially came from. If F-Zero was there for the single-player focused hardcore racists, Super Mario Kart would be the casual racing alternative built for simultaneous two-player action. However, when Nintendo started development on the multiplayer driving game, it was a far cry from F-Zero or even what Super Mario Kart would eventually be. For a while, the game wasn't even using karts and it didn't even have racing. More surprisingly, there wasn't any Mario in it, so we take that out and remove that. It's a real head scratcher why they didn't release this version. Eventually they put Mario in because he stacks paper to the ceiling and rides on 24-inch chrome. They added some race courses, some items, other Mario characters, a battle mode, and the Super Mario Kart we all know and tolerate was born. It did come with some drawbacks compared to F-Zero, mainly that the track sizes needed to be reduced significantly in order to allow for simultaneous two-player action. The focus on multiplayer also meant that the game's view was permanently split down the middle. So when you're playing in single player, which will be 99.9% of the time because you're playing Super Mario Kart post Y2K, you'll be stuck with a map for half of the screen. These two trade-offs did nothing to slow its critical or commercial success. The players at the time were more than welcoming of these drawbacks because it meant simultaneous Mode 7 racing action, which was a rarity. It became one of the best-selling games on the Super Nintendo. I mean, this shit even outsold Double Dash. Everyone loved Super Mario Kart, and it launched a franchise that has graced every Nintendo console since the Game Boy Advance. And if you want more history, watch this video because it's got way more details than we have time to get into here. He even goes into how Miyamoto used Inception techniques to steer Sega into losing the console war. You can't miss this one. Super Mario Kart is without a doubt historically important and impressive, so how does the game play today? Let's start with the good stuff. I like the graphical style of Super Mario Kart. The characters are easy to distinguish no matter what angle you see them from, and the few course themes are pretty cool. I appreciate the foundation it created for pretty much every kart racer ever. Small tracks, items, frantic gameplay, different weight classes that have different stats, so big guys have good top speeds but corner poorly, while tiny guys have good acceleration and that crazy grippy which makes taking corners easy. I love the soundtrack. Every single track in this game is a banger. You'll be hearing the character select screen blaring from my casket when they put me in the dirt, bro. I also love Donkey Kong Jr. Look, I'm gonna keep it real with you, Chief. I didn't love my time with Super Mario Kart. I hinted at it a little bit in the intro, but going backwards in the Mario Kart world is a tough thing to do. Each game adds so much compared to the one before that giving up all those things is a pretty hard sell, especially nowadays where these tracks have reappeared in other Mario Kart games that frankly play a lot better than this one. Super Mario Kart is about as bare bones as you can get, but it also just isn't much fun to actually drive around in. Going from Mario Kart 8 back to Super Mario Kart feels like trading trading in a new Alfa Romeo for an 87 Ford Taurus, complete with relearning how to drive an absolute dinosaur. Once Mario Kart went full 3D, Nintendo had a pretty good grip on the physics. Give me a race or two on any of these and I'll be skirting around like Ken Block late for a dentist appointment. Super Mario Kart never got to that level of familiarity for me. At no point did I really find myself gelling with these karts. They feel like taking a car on the track with bald tires and greasy hands from your 10th Arby's Big Montana of the day. Combine that with more slippery characters and courses and it's like the world's most annoying slip and slide. And the slip and slide is an intended mechanic. Hell, the manual has a rating for how slippery the tracks are, but all of the slipping and sliding can get really out of hand. This lack of grip made me race extremely conservatively, especially for a Mario Kart game. I was driving like your grandma headed to the grocery store at 5:26 a.m. Unlike the modern titles, this style of racing almost works. 50cc is a cakewalk no matter how you play it, and 100cc isn't that hard either, except for this cup. Fuck this cup. But anything past that and the conservative racing just won't cut it. You'll have to play very aggressively with a solid understanding of how to drift, and the drifting is where I got skill checked to the next fucking dimension. The normal driving feels sloppier than your sister's toppy, but the drifting is a whole different beast. The drifting system is absolutely bizarre. No matter how much I practiced doing it, I never got the hang of it, and even when I did hit a few good turns, I never cared for the way that it felt. I've played Mario Kart games for most of my life, and that made adjusting to this drifting system almost impossible. All my muscle memory was working directly against me because the drifting in this game isn't like any of the other 3D games. All of the other Mario Kart games, you hold a drift until you get a mini turbo, which you then use when you exit the drift. But that's not how things work here. If you hold a drift for too long, you'll spin out of the turn. This is really annoying, but there is a way to counter it, and that's by hitting the shoulder buttons to jump again. So instead of really drifting around long corners, you kind of just bounce around them instead. You might be thinking this would break your mini turbo like it does in the new games, but you'd be wrong. Super Mario Kart doesn't have any mini turbos, which begs the question, why would you even drift? It's because if you don't, you just won't win. The drifting meta in Super Mario Kart is as OP as the lying meta is to the American political system. Learning to utilize the unique drifting mechanics is pretty much the only way to advance out of 100cc. You just have to think about the drift in a whole different way. Drifting in Super Mario Kart is about positioning yourself and maintaining maximum momentum, not sliding around like a jackass for a little bit of boost. This makes for a drift system that has the highest risk to reward of any game in the series, with an equally high skill ceiling due to its unique movement properties. It's created a crazy speedrunning community, and those who are masters at the system are really something to see. None of this makes it fun though. I think the whole thing feels very counterintuitive no matter how much I tried to adjust to it. Drifting is my favorite part of Mario Kart, and they just didn't have it figured out in the first iteration. The risk to reward ratio feels more punishing than it should be, because messing up a drift is likely to result in losing a race, regardless of how well you were racing outside of that one bad turn. My overall dislike for the driving is about 1/3 mad cause bad, 1/3 controls feeling poopy, and 1/3 knowing how much better racing feels in the other games. And my frustration was only enhanced by the tracks and the filthy cheating bastards that live there. Much like my ex-wife after a solitary sip of Pabst Blue Ribbon, the CPUs are huge cheaters. They've got the standard racing game bullshit down to a T. The rubber banding is downright comical with how fast they can recover from any detriment. It feels like the racers have a predetermined order they're supposed to finish in, and the game will do absolutely anything to make sure that happens. These dudes go ghost more than Danny fucking Phantom the way they phase through items and obstacles. Sometimes the game will play a jump animation like they leapt over the item and dunked on you with their superior skill. Other times they'll just drive right through something and it plays this animation instead. As if all that bullshit wasn't enough, they also have an unlimited supply of their own special items. These dudes have access to items you can't even get, and they'll use them with reckless abandon. They're constantly sniping you with bullshit or running you down with star power. I've been in 3 AM Russian Dust 2 matches that have less hacking than this does. The challenge rides a really fine line between being unfair but fun to beat and being completely annoying. When their bullshit hacking ways combine with sloppy controls and road hazards, you can get Mario Karted harder than in any other game in the series. And since they're hacking so fucking hard, if they hit you once or twice, it's just game over. If you drop to 4th place, you may as well restart the race because the chance of you returning to the front of the pack is is negligible. Getting the best of the CPU feels good because you know that they're not playing fair, but losing to them feels like bullshit because they're cheating. It really makes Super Mario Kart the Dust 2 of this series. You know what else Dust 2 has in common with Super Mario Kart? Terrible map design. I'm just joking about one of them. Since this is the first Mario Kart, I'm willing to give them a lot of slack on stuff. Bad controls? Okay. It's a 2D racer and a lot of them do feel a little bit weird. Bullshit AI? Okay, that's kind of an arcade racing game staple. But bad tracks? There's 20 courses in Super Mario Kart and a majority of these courses just aren't that good. So let's run through all of them. Both Koopa Beaches and both Vanilla Lakes are just squares. Fuck whoever thought slippery ice in a game this slippery was a good idea, because it wasn't. The Choco Island courses are a little bit better, but you probably couldn't tell over your eyes bleeding. I think Donut Plains 1 and 2 are pretty good, but Donut Plains 3 has a lot of narrow sections, tight turns, and this stupid bridge that are more frustrating to navigate than they are fun. I like the Ghost Valley tracks. They're a little simple, but the holes in the road give you something to do. There's also some shortcuts which are fun to take. I also liked the Mario Circuit courses. They have the highest traction out of any of the tracks, which make you feel more in control. The designs are all pretty decent, with turns that are fun to tackle and gimmicks that would have been cool to see in other courses. Bowser's castles are hit and miss for me. The third one looks like if someone put more thought into the first one, and the second course has this part in it. Why not just put "fuck you" on the ground instead? These karts don't have a reverse function, so you either do this or you fry your driver alive. And finally, we have Rainbow Road. I hate this version of Rainbow Road. In a game defined by slippery controls, a precise track with lots of hazards and sharp turns is the least fun thing in the world. That leaves just a handful of fun courses, and with most of the tracks sharing graphics from other courses, the cups can feel very repetitive very fast. Sadly, I'm unable to review the battle courses in the battle mode. For whatever reason, none of the people locked in my basement wanted to play Super Mario Kart with me. The only reason I came back to Super Mario Kart in the first place is because it has a place on the top 100 list. I wanted to see if I agreed with the consensus opinion that this game deserves a spot here, and it shouldn't come as a surprise that my answer is no. I can see the argument for its inclusion. Without it, we wouldn't have the Mario Kart series, which is a classic series of games, but for the sake of my list, I'm not sure that alone gives it a free pass. If we never got Dune 2, we wouldn't have gotten the much better StarCraft or Warcraft games, so does it deserve to be here? Without Wolf 3D, there's no Doom, so does Wolf 3D deserve to be here? Without this shit, video games probably just don't exist, so does it deserve to be here? I love video game history, and I think there's a lot of value in going back to play classic games. Hell, I have Donkey Kong and Miss Pac-Man on this list, and they're way older than Super Mario Kart, but I also had way more fun playing those than I did with Super Mario Kart. My top 100 list is a little less academic in that sense. I think of it more as a list of games that you should probably try and play before you die. Their historical significance is absolutely a part of that decision. Otherwise, this list would just be Shrek Super Slam 99 times. But I don't care how historically important a game is if I don't have a good time playing it. Like Reggie always says, if it's not fun, why bother? And from that perspective, I just don't think you need to play Super Mario Kart before Joseph Smith calls you back to heaven. I think everyone should play one of the games in this series. A series this large and influential to the medium should be played by anyone that's interested in video games, but I think they'd be better served by any of the 3D titles over this one. I really do have a deep appreciation for Super Mario Kart. It spawned a whole new genre of racing games, a genre that I have loved for as long as I can remember, and for that reason I wish I could have played it when it came out and I hadn't experienced the newer games in the series. Rarely do I ever find returning to a series' first incarnation difficult, but sadly this was one of those times. I found myself routinely wishing to play any of the other Mario Kart games over this one, so I don't feel like I can put it on a list of my top 100 games when I didn't even want to keep playing it. So Super Mario Kart has been cut off my top 100 list, but which Mario Kart should should go on the list? Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm tempted to say Mario Kart 8, but I haven't played the other ones recently enough to know that for sure. Maybe I'll take a look at each game in the series. If you guys would like to see that, let me know. Have you played Super Mario Kart? Did you find going back to it as difficult as I did? Would it be in your top 100 list? I'm anticipating there's gonna be some disagreement on this one, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
That's right, we're Japanese.